Hello, sixth grade, and welcome to Unit 1, Week 4. Let's go ahead and start with your vocabulary words. Your first word is the word exerts. A horse exerts a lot of power to pull a carriage up a hill. He exerts a lot of influence on other members. When have you exerted your strength to do something? So to exert means to show or to put in a lot of particular, either energy, power. You can exert your influence. Next, your word is pulverize. When you crush something into small pieces, you pulverize it. The waves pulverize the sandy shore. What is an antonym of pulverize? So pulverize basically means to smash something down into really teeny tiny pieces. Next, we have the word plummeting. Plummeting is the act of suddenly dropping or falling from a high place. So you can say he was plummeting down the ski mountain. What happens when temperatures are plummeting below 32 degrees Fahrenheit? So it just means to drop or fall very quickly. Next, we have the word scalding. Something that is extremely hot is scalding. Huge explosions rocket the lava higher up into the scalding plume. So scalding just means something that's like burning hot. So if you've ever boiled water, the water is scalding hot. Next, we have the word shards. Shards are sharp pointed pieces of glass, metal, pottery, rock, or any other type of material. So shards just means sharp parts of something. So shards of glass flew from the broken window. Where have you seen shards? Next, we have the word cascade. Cascade means something that is cascaded, such as water has fallen or poured down. So it means to fall or to spill or pour down. The waterfall cascaded down the mountain. Where have you seen water cascade? Our next word is documentation. Documentation is support of a claim with facts, usually by giving proof in writing. The company leader reviewed all documentation before making a decision. What types of documentation have you read? So documentation is basically proof of something in written form. Next, we have number 8, and that is the word dynamic. Having energy or forceful activity is dynamic. The lawyer has a dynamic personality. So someone who shows a lot of energy, someone who shows a lot of force or confidence in what they're doing is dynamic. So you've seen maybe dynamic speakers that really keep their audience engaged and focused while they're talking. What professions require dynamic personalities? Okay, next let's get into our spelling for this week. So this week we're focusing on what we call R-controlled vowels. Now, R-controlled vowels are basically vowels that any time that the letter R comes after a vowel, we call it an R-controlled vowel, or it becomes part of an R-controlled syllable. We call this the bossy R. Now, the reason we call this the bossy R is it makes you sound like a pirate every time you read words that have these R-controlled vowels, because they all make the strong R sound. Now, some of the R-controlled vowels can make the same sound. So, for example, the sound can be represented as in writing as ER, IR, or UR, depending on the word. Other R-controlled vowels include R, air, or, and So R, like car or march, air, such as in air or chair, or, such as in born or fort, and like shirt or first. Let's take a look at your spelling words. Your first word is the word search. Next is starve, rumor, reward, sparkle, bargain, parched, pursue, servant, torch, earnest, mourn, fierce, pierce, urge, wharf, court, weird, favorite, burnt, library, minute, caught, sphere, and aeronautic. All right, next, let's talk about your comprehension skill and strategy. For this week, we're going to focus on rereading and then main idea and key details. So rereading a text or a passage helps you to get a better understanding of the main idea And this is especially important when we're talking about informational or expository texts. Now, these are both different names for nonfiction texts. Because they're providing you with information, because they're providing you with facts and data, you want to reread those because there's going to be a lot of information packed into that passage. So you read it through the first time to get a general idea. You go back and reread it to look for specific information, specific facts that you might want to gain a better understanding about. And all of that can be helped with rereading it. Now, the main idea we've talked about in the past is what the passage is mostly about. So what is the main concept in this entire reading? So to find the main idea, some things you can do is look at the title to ask what the passage is about, look at what information is being repeated by the author and being represented over and over again, and then look at the key details. Now, those are the parts that are going to give support or extra information about the main idea. So if you see something that's constantly circling back to the same idea or statement, you know that's going to be your main idea, and those extra supporting parts are your key details. So they can be diagrams and pictures, they can be explanations, charts, facts, pictures of the captions underneath the pictures. All of these can be key details that support your main idea. All right, next let's get into your genre. Your genre for this week is narrative nonfiction. So narrative nonfiction, we've talked about before, is a true story that's written in the style of a fiction novel. The narrative nonfiction genre contains facts told as a story. They're told by a narrator who is part of the story or event. They focus on storytelling, but they have to be as accurate to the truth as possible. Now, your story for this week is actually an expository text, which means it's also talking about an event that actually happened. It shares facts. Okay, next let's talk about your vocabulary skill and strategy. So your vocab strategy for this week, we're going to focus on types of figurative language called metaphors and similes. So metaphors and similes are figurative language, and what I mean by that is that figurative language is a type of writing that's used by an author to make your writing more interesting, right? You want it to be more interesting for the reader. You want to give them unique descriptions of what you're talking about. You want to write in a creative way. All of these things make the reader want to keep reading. Now, metaphors and similes both are used to compare two things that are not the same. So you have to be able to identify what the things being compared are. Now, a metaphor compares two unlike things by saying that one thing is another thing. So words that give you a hint that you're looking at a metaphor are the words am, is, are, was, and were. So if I say, I am a sleepy sloth, I'm comparing myself to a sloth. And I use the word am. I am not actually a sloth, but this kind of writing gives you a more descriptive way of looking at it, right? It's more creative and it gives you a picture in your head that still gets the same message across. If I say life is a roller coaster, I'm comparing life to a roller coaster. Her eyes are sky blue. I'm comparing her eyes to the sky. The calm lake surface was a mirror. No, I'm comparing the lake surface to a mirror. Is it actually a mirror? No, but it gives you an idea and it helps you to visualize that, the lake surface is very clear and reflective. The water is very calm. It's not moving, so it looks like a mirror because it's reflecting the things around it. The snowflakes were a white blanket on the grass when we woke up this morning. So I'm comparing the snowflakes to a blanket. Now, similes are a little bit different. Similes compare two unlike things, but they use the word like or as. That's the main difference. I ran as fast as a cheetah. I'm comparing myself, I, to a cheetah. Her hands were cold like ice. So because I said like, this makes this one a simile. I'm comparing her hands to ice. All right, next let's get into your grammar notes for this week. Now, first I want to remind you about certain parts of sentences and what they're called because we're going to be referring to them throughout our notes. Now, a clause is a group of words with a subject and a verb. You can have an independent clause that's a complete thought all by itself. You can also call an independent clause a simple sentence. So an independent clause can be, we play outside. It gives you a subject and it gives you a verb, we play. A dependent clause is not a complete thought and it can't stand alone as a sentence. So think of this as a sentence fragment. So if I say, after we finish our homework, you might look at that and you say, okay, what happens after we finish our homework? So you see that it's missing the rest of the thought. So independent clause is a simple sentence. Dependent clause is a sentence fragment. It's missing a piece. Now, a complex sentence has an independent clause and one or more dependent clauses all rolled up into one sentence. So it's a sentence that contains two related clauses that are joined by a conjunction other than the words and, but, or. Now, those were our focus last week. This week, we're going to focus on some different ones. So our first example is when we go to the beach, comma, we can build a sandcastle. So when you begin a sentence with what we call a subordinating conjunction, and we're going to talk about those in a moment, and then a dependent clause, you need to put a comma after that dependent clause. So when we go to the beach is a dependent clause. It doesn't stand alone as a sentence by itself. It needs something else. So if I'm beginning with what we call a subordinating conjunction and a dependent clause, I need to put a comma after it before I put my independent clause. We can build a sandcastle. Now I can say we can build a sandcastle by itself. That's a complete thought. We is my subject. What can we do? Build a sandcastle. So that's independent. Now you can switch up the order. If you start with your independent clause and your subordinating conjunction is sitting in the middle of your sentence, you don't need that comma anymore. So I can switch the order of this sentence and say, we can build a sandcastle when we go to the beach. So notice all I did was switch their places, and then I didn't need that comma anymore. Now, we talked about coordinating conjunctions. We said coordinating conjunctions are connecting words, and they help to connect or join two words, phrases, or clauses. They join words of the same group or grammatical rank or importance, so two nouns or two verbs or two independent clauses, and so on. The coordinating conjunctions and, but, and or can be used to create a compound sentence. That was our focus last week. And we know that a compound sentence contains two or more related sentences joined by either and, or but. These three words have different functions. And joins ideas, but shows a change in thought, and or offers a choice. Now let's talk about those subordinating conjunctions we were just mentioning. Subordinating conjunctions tell where, when, why, or how. Some subordinating conjunctions are the words after, because, if, unless, while, until, when, and before. So you can find these either at the beginning or the middle of a complex sentence. So remember, we said a complex sentence has an independent clause and one or more dependent clauses that are squashed together and connected by one of those conjunctions. So I listed a few examples here. Subordinating conjunctions tell where, when, or why, or how. So one of our words is after. Now, if I begin with after in my dependent clause, then I have to put a comma. After we finished our homework, comma, we can play outside. Now, if I switch the order and I began with my independent clause and I said, we can play outside after we finish our homework, I don't need that comma anymore. So remember, the only time you need a comma after that dependent clause is if you're starting your sentence with that subordinating conjunction and the independent clause. If that's the way you're starting it, then you need the comma. Because of the rain, comma, we couldn't go to the beach. If you finish your chores, comma, you can watch a movie. Unless we buy apples, comma, we can't make apple pie. While I read the story, comma, my sister drew pictures. Or while I read the story, my sister drew pictures. Until the rain stops, comma, we'll play board games. When we write neatly, comma, our teacher is happy. And our last example here, before we saw the lightning, comma, we heard thunder. Now, some subordinating conjunctions are called relative adverbs and relative pronouns. These are used to join independent clauses and dependent clauses. So our relative adverbs are the words where, when, and why. And our relative pronouns are the words who, whom, whose, which, and that. So where, when, and why where will describe a place. So I know the town where you live. That uses the word where, and it's talking about a location or a place. I remember when my friend would mail me letters. That describes a time. Or she told me the reason why she left the team. So that describes a reason. So those three relative adverbs refer to either a place, they describe a time, or they describe a reason. Now, our relative pronouns, who, whom, whose, which, and that, all have different purposes as well. The author who wrote the book is German, so this relates to people in the subject of the sentence. So the author who wrote the book, this is about that subject. The letter should be addressed to whom. This relates to people, but this is in the object part or the predicate part of the sentence. So who is for people when you're talking about someone that's in the subject of your sentence, and whom is when you're talking about someone who's in the predicate of your sentence. The person whose house is at the end of the street has a cat. So whose is a possessive. It shows ownership. So the person whose house is at the end of the street has a cat, showing ownership of the house. This is the cake which Mary made. This relates to when you're talking about animals or inanimate objects. So that means not living things. So when you're referring to animals or things, you use which. September is the month that classes start. That can refer to people, animals, or things. So classes are a thing, right? September is the month that classes start. So these are our relative pronouns and our relative adverbs. Okay, now some dependent clauses are essential to the meaning of a sentence. That means you need them there to understand the sentence. So for these ones, for essential clauses, you do not use commas to set off these clauses. So if I say the man who left his wallet is coming back for it, it is essential, it's important for us to know which man, the man who left his wallet. So that's an example of an essential clause. Again, essential clauses, no commas. Non-essential clauses, which basically are just extra information, because they don't affect the basic meaning of the sentence that you're working with, and they're just additional information, we do use commas to offset these. Now, these are also called appositive phrases, but we'll talk about that another time. So if I say Mary, comma, whose mom is a nurse, comma, sits behind me in class. Now, this is non-essential because I don't need to know that her mom is a nurse to know that she sits beside me in class. These are separate things, but it does give extra information. And last, we can also use dashes or parentheses to set off non-essential clauses. So again, non-essential means things that are not necessarily important to the meaning of the sentence, things that can be taken out of the sentence and the meaning of the sentence isn't affected. We can also use parentheses for that, or we can use dashes. So if I say Muhammad Ali, and in parentheses, I put the years he was alive, 1942 to 2016, arguably the greatest athlete of all time, claimed he would float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. So I can take those years, that parentheses with the years out of the sentence, and the meaning of my sentence is not affected. My next example, Mr. Lee is suited to the job He has more experience than others in the department, but he may not be available. So Mr. Lee is suited to the job, but he may not be available is the main part of my sentence. The middle part is extra information that he has more experience than the others. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at your story for this week. So here again, we're in narrative nonfiction. Now remember, because it's nonfiction, that means it's giving you information about real things that happen. Because it is a narrative nonfiction, it's talking about someone who was actually there, and it's usually telling it from their perspective.
Genre: narrative nonfiction. Into the Volcano. A volcano researcher at work. By Donna O'Meara. Photographs by Stephen and Donna O'Meara. Essential question: how do natural forces affect Earth? Read how erupting volcanoes continue to change the landscape of planet Earth. Kilauea volcano on the southeastern side of Hawaii's Big Island is one of the world's most active volcanoes. Not only has it erupted over 40 times in the past century, but it has been erupting almost non-stop since 1983. In the following memoir, volcano researcher and photographer Donna O'Meara describes the first time she was able to explore Kilauea on her own. She was hoping she would be able to photograph the volcano in action, and she wasn't disappointed. Alone on Kilauea. I zigzagged down the chain of craters road to sea level and parked in front of a deep lava flow that had covered the highway and several houses a few months earlier. As I arrived, the sun broke through the clouds at last. I heaved on my backpack and climbed up the hardened lava rock. Kilauea's lava flows originate high up on the flank of the volcano. Gravity sends the lava flowing down to the sea in red rivers. The chillier air quickly cools and hardens the tops of these rivers, creating sealed tubes through which the hot lava rushes. Shield volcanoes like Kilauea often form underground plumbing systems with dozens of these lava tubes. The tubes can be miles long, a Hawaiian hotspot. The Hawaiian Islands were all formed by a hotspot under the Pacific Plate. Each island formed separately as the plate moved northwest over the hotspot at about the rate your fingernails grow, 36.5 millimeters, 1.5 inches, per year. First came Kauai, then Oahu, Molokai, and Maui. Now the Big Island of Hawaii sits over the hotspot that formed its 6 volcanoes: Kohala, Mauna Kea, Hualalai, Mauna Loa, Kilauea, and Loihi Seamount. Kohala is extinct. It will never erupt again. Mauna Loa, Mauna Kea, and Hualalai are dormant, sleeping, but could erupt again. Scientists estimate that little Loihi will have to be about 6,000 meters, 20,000 feet tall, before it even breaks the ocean surface and becomes the Big Island's newest volcano, and that could take tens of thousands of years. Feisty Kilauea, still fed by the hotspot, is one of the most active volcanoes in the world. Sometimes the lava tubes crack and red lava squeezes out. This is called a surface breakout. For a short period of time, the red lava flow is visible. Then it cools and hardens again. A surface breakout is a rare and wonderful sight. I hope to find one and photograph it before the lava hardened again. But walking around lava tubes can be treacherous. It's hard to know when you're right over one, and the crust over a tube can be thin. You're at risk of breaking through and plummeting into the molten lava below. I planned to be careful, but I was also determined. I wanted to photograph molten red lava, how volcanoes form. The Earth's crust is made up of huge solid chunks called tectonic plates that float atop Earth's fluid mantle. Volcanoes form when magma from Earth's mantle breaks through the plates or oozes out at the edges. This can happen in different ways. Subduction. When two plates smash against each other, one plate is forced under the other, above right. The underlying plate melts into magma and can erupt through the overlying plate as a volcano. Central America's volcanoes, including Arenal in Costa Rica and Pacaya in Guatemala, were formed this way. Mid-ocean rift. When two plates drift apart, magma fills the gap between them, and submarine, under the ocean, volcanoes can form as shown above. Iceland's Surtsey is a good example of a volcano that grew slowly until it emerged from the ocean. Hotspot. Sometimes there is a weak spot in one of Earth's plates, and a stationary plume of magma erupts through it. The Hawaiian volcanoes were all formed this way. Volcano types. Just like people, volcanoes come in all shapes and sizes. There are more than 25 different kinds of volcanoes on Earth. The lava's viscosity, stickiness, plays a big role in the type and shape of a volcano and how the volcano erupts. The stickier, more viscous the lava, the more pointed and cone-shaped the volcano. The more fluid, less viscous the lava, the more rounded and low the volcano. Here are a few of the most common types of volcanoes. Shield volcanoes. Shield volcanoes have very fluid basalt lava flows that can travel relatively quickly. Over time, thousands of syrupy lava flows can pile up like pancake batter to form these gently sloping, shield-shaped volcanoes. Kilauea is a shield volcano. Stratovolcanoes. The classic Hollywood cone-shaped volcano is created as explosive eruptions of ash, lava, and cinders build up in layers. Arenal and Stromboli are stratovolcanoes. Because the ash and lava form layers, these volcanoes are sometimes called composite volcanoes. Compound volcanoes. A compound volcano has frequent eruptions that form more than one cone, dome, or vent. Pacaya is a compound volcano. Cinder cone volcanoes. Cinder cones are formed when a vent, a hole through which lava erupts, tosses lava cinders and spatter skyward. When these fall back to Earth, they build an oval hill with a circular depression on top. Cinder cone volcanoes. Compound volcanoes. Shield volcanoes. Stratovolcanoes. To find my way back after sunset, I stuck white sticks into lava cracks about every 100 feet and tied white pieces of cloth to them like little flags. Later on in the dark, the white markers would glow in my flashlight beam and lead me back to my car. On my right, the coast dropped off sharply in a steep cliff. Saltwater droplets sprayed my face, and I could hear huge waves pounding the cliff. At high tide, the Pacific's waves were enormous. I was thirsty. I needed some water. I sat down, but before I took a sip, I noticed that my seat was getting hot. I felt the hardened lava with the palm of my hand. It was hot. Very hot. Too hot. Uh-oh. Was I sitting right on top of a lava tube? Types of lava. Molten rock below Earth's surface is called magma. Once it breaks through Earth's crust, it is called lava. As soon as lava erupts, it begins to cool, causing gas in the lava to escape and minerals to crystallize and harden. The chemical composition, gas content, and temperature all dictate what the lava will look like and how it will behave. Viscous lava. Viscous, sticky and slow-moving magma, shown above, of andesite, dacite, and rhyolite sometimes plugs a volcano's vent like a cork. Then pressure builds on gases trapped in the magma until, kaboom! A huge explosion occurs. It's a bit like when you place your thumb over the opening of a soda bottle, shake it, and release it. The gases expand and explode violently, shattering the lava into smaller particles of cinders and ash. Pahoehoe lava. Pahoehoe lava above contains the igneous rock basalt and is hot and smooth. It moves like spilled pancake batter. When it hardens, it can be smooth or ropey. A'a lava. A'a lava, shown above, is also made of basalt, but it clumps as it cools. A'a looks like chunky blocks that have been lumped together in a long pile. When the flow moves, these blocks tumble slowly forward as if a bulldozer were pushing the pile from behind. The moving blocks make sounds like glass breaking and fingernails screeching on a blackboard. To get a better view, I hiked inland and scrambled up a mound of lava called a tumulus, a big pimple made when lava pressing up from beneath pops open, leaving a broken hill. From it I could see an amazing sight. Steam and gases wisped up from the ground in crisscrossing lines. These were probably the outlines of lava tubes. Off in the distance I saw something even more amazing. A strange pink cloud. What was it? I wanted to investigate, but the gassy outlines of lava tubes were in my way. Here's an old photo of my husband, Steve O'Mara, standing inside an empty lava tube. Just imagine this tube filled with lava. Gases and steam can signal an underground lava tube. I was looking for a route around the lava tubes when I came to a wall of lava rocks. I had stumbled upon Wahaolu Heiau. A heiau is an ancient Hawaiian temple. Wahaulu means red mouth in Hawaiian. Some Hawaiian temples are considered sacred, and I certainly didn't want to disturb this one. Plus, it looked as though the lava tubes went under the heiau as well. I was sandwiched between a raging sea cliff on the right and a sacred temple on the left. If I hoped to find out what was causing the pink cloud, there was only one way to go, straight across the tops of the steaming lava tubes. Would the hardened tops of the tubes support my weight? There was only one way to find out. I held my breath and ran. Kilauea, a shield volcano. Shield volcanoes like Kilauea have surfaces that are cracked by earthquakes. These weakened areas are called rift zones. Kilauea has two rift zones, the southwest rift zone and the east rift zone. For the last 20 years, most activity has occurred along the east rift zone, which extends east from the summit to a point about 55 kilometers, 35 miles offshore. Kilauea's east rift zone is walloped with up to 100 earthquakes a day. They severely crack the rock in the area. As magma rises from below, it exerts even more pressure on these shattered rocks. Finally, the pressure is too much. The rock cracks open, allowing molten magma to erupt to the surface. Rift zones aren't the only places magma erupts. It could surprise us and erupt in a new weakened area at any time. Kilauea's fluid lava flows are so universally recognized that the phrase Hawaiian-type eruption is an accepted scientific term used to describe similar volcanic activity around the world. Kilauea usually oozes pahoehoe or a'a lavas, but a more explosive eruption is possible. A walk on the wild side. I ran across the smoking tops of the lava tubes as if my life depended on it, because it did. I made it, or had I? The pink cloud now loomed in front of me, and it was tossing chunks of lava right at me. I had read about these steam clouds, but never seen one. They happened when hot lava pours into cold seawater and instantly boils the water into steam. As it hits the cold ocean, the hot lava is blasted into chunks called lava bombs and spatter. Huge explosions rocket the lava bombs higher and higher up into the scalding plume. Then, thanks to gravity, the heavy lava bombs and spatter hurtle back to Earth. Most people would have run by now, but I wanted to see the lava pouring into the sea. That meant getting to the cliff edge, and that meant running right through the steam cloud and the falling lava bombs. I dodged and ran as hot lava bombs rained down around me. Blasts of steam blew some of the flowing lava into tiny shards of glass that pricked my bare arms like bee stings. Each step crunched. It was like running over black crystal snowflakes made of glass. When Pahoehoe lava cools quickly, it forms a crunchy black crust that shatters like glass if stepped on. Two black lava tubes empty their molten contents into the Pacific Ocean, causing big steam clouds to rise as the seawater vaporizes. Waves pulverize the lava into black sand, which washes ashore and creates a black sand beach. The steam was hot. Worse, hydrochloric acid in the steam cloud stung my eyes, nose, and throat. Coughing, I hastily poured water onto my bandana and tied it around my mouth and nose. I put on goggles to protect my eyes. When I got to the cliff edge, I could hardly believe my eyes. Pounding waves had wrenched off a huge piece of the cliff. The lava tube and the entire river of orange lava was exposed as it poured into the ocean. But it wouldn't be visible for long. The cold seawater might seal the tube in minutes. I grabbed my camera and began shooting. Ouch! The camera was getting hot. I wrapped the bottom of my shirt around the camera like a pot holder and worried that my film might be cooked. I could see a small ledge jutting out about 2 meters, 6 feet down, on the cliff face. If I could make it down there, I could get out of the heat. I carefully lowered myself. If I missed the ledge, I'd boil in the lava sea steam cauldron below me. I dropped onto the ledge and had a ringside seat for the best lava show in town. An incandescent torrent of fiery lava cascaded from a gaping tube in the black cliff and poured furiously into the turquoise sea. Kaboom! Another blast, as hot lava sputtered into a whirlpool of steam. The noise was deafening. The sun was setting and the light was magical. I began to shoot my film. I was lucky. It was almost 20 minutes before the sea won the battle and cooled the top of the lava river into a filmy black crust. The tube sealed over again, and the show ended. The air grew still. All I could hear was the waves smacking against the cliff. Kilauea Volcano, Hawaii. Key. Yellow-red area. Crater. Black dot. Town. I took a deep breath and realized I might have been the first person to photograph this kind of volcanic event. I looked down and saw that my arms had a pink lava sunburn. I could feel my face glowing, too. As I climbed back up, my left foot shattered the thin ledge I stood on. I could see pounding waves through the hole. Do not look down. Do not look down. I clung to the cliff face and heaved myself up. In the scramble, my leg caught on sharp lava, and it sliced into my calf muscle like a razor. I ripped a piece of t-shirt and tied a tight tourniquet below my knee to slow the blood flow. Then I stuffed some absorbent photo lens wipes into the wound and duct taped the whole thing tight to my leg. The pink cloud was made up of vaporized seawater, lava spatter, and lava bombs. It was the bombs that worried me. Lava bombs are chunks of hardened lava. Some can be as big as a football, not something you'd want crashing down on your head. In the dark, the hike back was long. Thankfully, my little white flags were there to guide me. When I got to the car, I celebrated with a candy bar. The sugar gave me energy to drive the 2 hours to a clinic in Hilo. The doctors cleaned my wound as well as they could, but to this day, there are still tiny shards of lava embedded in my calf. Some people believe that lava is the physical form of Kilauea's volcano goddess, Pele. When my leg hurts, I wonder if that is true. My lava sunburn was gone in about a week, and I was relieved that all my film was fine. Those dramatic images, one of which you can see above, were some of the hardest I have ever had to work to get. I feel that I really earned them. After almost 20 years of shooting volcanoes, they are still my favorites. A chunk of cliff fell off, exposing this beautiful lava river flowing from its tube. A rare moment, and one I was lucky enough to photograph. Right. Donna O'Meara, volcano researcher.
All right, that takes us to the end of our story for this week. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, have an amazing day. Take care. Bye-bye.